Hey guys, what is up? This month I sat down with my good friend Robbie Kay, who is an actor you might know. He has done some incredible work despite his tender years, including a couple roles that I would consider iconic at this point. But we got together on Zoom to talk about the realities of Hollywood, making it in the business, having longevity, and make sure you stick around to the end when I give Robbie a very personal and from the heart compliment that only somebody who's a friend of Robbie's would know. So a little bit of a personal insight into him coming your way. Let's get to it. Robbie Kay, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. It's good to see your face. We've been talking on the phone for months.
You've definitely helped me through a few rough patches in this incredible life event we've been living through on other sides of the world.
I should start charging you for life coach lessons.
Right, yeah, I'm expecting the invoice to come in the mail or something.
Yeah, should really get on that. Yeah, things are good. I mean, I've been in the UK for the last few months, spending a lot of time with my family and trying to see through the kind of COVID craziness that we've been going through. And obviously, like, our industry pretty much stopped dead for the most part. It's been a really, really interesting time, I think, for at least for people in our industry. By July, about 3 or 4 months into our lockdown, I wrote the whole year off. I was just like, there's nothing else happening this year work-wise. Yeah. And so it then became okay, well, how do we spend the rest of this year? How do we survive? How do we get through this in the best possible way, not just kind of financially, but also for mental health. So yeah, I very quickly realized that it was going to be a very, very long time.
Do you think you're a pessimist or a realist?
Definitely a realist. Kind of leaning on the optimistic side, but definitely a realist, I think. Yeah, I mean, we were talking about Bitcoin the other week and you were ranting and raving about it. It's like 100K, 100K. And I'm like, well, it's all kind of hype at the moment, so let's just see what happens. And I don't know. I guess it's really easy to get swept up.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't dissing you. I think it's a good thing. In fact, I've always been kind of impressed by how level-headed you are, to be honest, even from a young age.
Yeah, I'm an old man trapped in a young man's body.
You really are. Maybe that's why we get on so well. But, I mean, where does that come from? Have you just always been like that? You strike me as one of those people that even as a young dude, kind of old head on young shoulders type thing. Have you always been like that?
Well, I mean, I guess, obviously not when I was like a small kid, but I think like, so I got into the, film industry when I was 10, and it didn't happen because I pursued it. It kind of happened by chance. So, for people who don't know, I went to an audition because my mates went to one, and casting director was like, "Are you next?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm, sort of just here, and we're going to hang out afterwards." And she was like, "Oh, why don't you come in and read some lines off a page and see how you do?" And I did, and that just, I happened to book a role through that audition, and the experience on set, I loved so much. It was a really fun time, and I was getting paid to act and have fun, and so I wanted to keep doing it. And yeah, that's kind of how it started. And so all throughout my most of my childhood and through my teen years as well, I was working on set with other adults, and that became kind of almost the social circle, was interacting with adults in a workplace, essentially. So if anything, it got to the point where I was far more comfortable talking to adults than I was people my own age, which was always a bit of a struggle at school. Kind of understanding people my age was quite difficult, and I kind of had to, when I was off doing work, I felt I was at my happiest, kind of doing what I loved and making movies and making TV shows and stuff. And when I came back to school, I felt like I had to really dissociate and put that part of my life to one side. So I never really kind of talked about it or discussed it at school with anyone because A, I didn't want to, and B, it was a different wavelength. I think a lot of people, it's kind of one of those industries that you don't really understand until you're in it, until you've experienced it. There's kind of only so much you can say and describe before they go, "Oh, really interesting. What the fuck does that mean?" So I think I guess that's kind of why turned out the way I did.
That makes sense. And even, I think, you know, it's a thing where to people who are not in the industry, it sort of seems so glamorous, you know?
I think everyone sees the end product, right? That's the whole point. Like, they see the end product, it's all polished, it's all finished. You always look great on camera because they've edited around you. You know, you have all of these... You're kind of like surrounded by people whose entire job, as an actor at least, whose entire job is to make you look good in front of a camera. But there's a lot more to it than that, and yeah, I mean, the actual process itself is horrible. Like, in any year, like, I get told no like 100 times through different auditions, different meetings, different kind of job opportunities that come my way. Like, and it's the same with every actor. Like, you have to just dust yourself off and move on every time. I don't know how much this makes sense to people that haven't done it before, but you know, there are a lot of there's a lot of emotional stock that you have to put in every project that you go up for, because that's how you get invested. That's how you do your best work. And if you don't do that, you probably won't get the job. But if you do that, you're setting yourself up to be burned, to be hurt, because you know, you don't have you don't get the job, and you have to deal with that, and then you have to deal with that role you went up for being on the bus stop right outside your house a year and a half later, you know, coming soon to Netflix, blah 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 blah. That's something that quite literally happened to me not that long ago, and it's fucking horrible, especially when you're down to that last three. But it just comes with the territory, and I like to think, on the more optimistic side, you know, every no is leading towards the next yes, and every single audition, all the hours that you put into those opportunities are leading towards that next job, and you know, that next level. So you always kind of have to keep thinking of it less on a project by project basis and more of an overall. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You're going to get knocked down constantly, but if you want to succeed, you just need to have skin in the game for as long as possible. So that's how I cope with it.
Dude, I mean, we are so on the same wavelength about that, because you have to come up with these kind of mental tricks to keep yourself in the game. And just what you said, you articulated that so beautifully, where if you get so caught up in each project, you are gonna burn out. I mean, there's gonna be this emotional burnout. But if you kind of say, hey man, I'm trying to have a career, right? And each audition is like an opportunity to work on my craft. And even if I don't get the gig, I got just a little bit better at my craft, like working on that audition. You know, I was practicing, I was doing my thing. I just got a little bit better. You kind of have to view it as you're getting better all the time, every audition you do, whether you get it or not. And that gives you a little bit of power back, I feel.
A lot of it is down to circumstance, and that's why when you just look at it without any emotion, it truly becomes a numbers game, and if the role comes along that's absolutely right for you and absolutely perfect for you, you're going to book it. It's as simple as that.
I've got to say, like, you know, being a director who's been on the other side of the casting process, where I'm getting a whole bunch of actors coming in, you have a few people that are good enough to do the job each time. It's not coming down to who's the best actor, as you say. It's like, okay, I'm building an ensemble here. How do they all line up? And if I go with this guy, I'm probably going to need a different quality over here. So that rules out that guy, even though he's an awesome actor.
I think it is a lifetime pact that you make with yourself. It's like, if you're going to do it, you need to do it properly, or don't do it at all. You know, it's not really something you can half-ass. But on the same token, it's like, don't let it be all-consuming. It's like what I always tell people when they ask me kind of like, you know, tips of like, what do I do if I want to be an actress or an actor, and you know, what are the steps I take? I always say, like, above everything else, have a backup plan, and have something that you can have cooking away in the background, whether that's a degree in something entirely different, whether it's setting up your own business, making money passively through other means, like whatever can help you facilitate the career that you want, absolutely go for it. Because the reality is the chances of things succeeding in this industry, no matter how much you tell yourself I'm the best and I'm gonna, I'm gonna win in the end, it can take a very long time for that to happen.
Yeah.
So having other things cooking at the same time is I think these days the only way to kind of survive long term, unless you get extremely lucky off the top and manage to bag a huge role in a big series that pays a lot of money and allows you not to worry about that part of life, unless that happens, which it can. You gotta think outside the box.
Dude, I agree with that completely. And it's funny, there's two different pieces of advice you hear. One is that kind of like have another string to your bow, have something else up your sleeve. And then you have some people who say, no plan B. It's just like you got to go all in. And I think there's somewhere in the middle, right? Because I think that approach of laser focus, no plan B, that's not actually the most conducive, for me anyway. I find that stepping away from acting and creative endeavors, having something else to focus on is really refreshing, and I actually come back to it renewed. I think it's the easiest thing in the world to burn out on, and I think, like you're saying, having a bit of diversity can actually make you better at this A game that you're pursuing.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a weird phenomenon that happens where, like, when you walk into a room and you don't give a fuck about the job and you don't care whether you get it or not, you put in a half-assed performance, they call you the next day and they want you to do it. Versus the job that you're perfect for and you put your heart and soul into it.
So there's something to be said about that strain that happens sometimes when you're really trying to give your best.
Not forcing it, yeah. I was at the driving range the other day hitting golf balls, and it's like whenever I tried hitting it as hard as I possibly could, I just screwed it up and it just went sideways. But it's like that weird thing about, like, you if you hit the sweet spot with zero power, it's still going to go further than if you just absolutely try to whack it. The conclusion is like there's no rhyme or reason to the audition process a lot of times. There's things that they look out for and you don't know what they're looking out for until they've cast the thing and you go, oh, I see. And they'll never tell you. So the best thing you can do is just have skin in the game and kind of do the best work you can do and kind of hope for the best. After kind of 15 years of doing this continuously, it really feels like it feels that way.
Well, dude, that's why I wanted to have you on here and have this chat, because it's like I'm all about keeping it real. And frankly, I wish I'd probably heard a few conversations like this back when I was just starting out, and you kind of have stars in your eyes. I think knowing what you're getting into is healthy, actually.
Yeah, and I also like to add to that, I think that even if you heard that back in the day, or even if I heard that back in the day, I think we wouldn't have listened. I think it's one of those things where it's like, it's so easy in hindsight to say, oh, if I had known this, it would have been fine. But I think a lot of people kind of have to go through the process themselves. It's, classic thing of like, you have to kind of get burned a little bit in order to truly understand the way things are. And that'll continue to happen. Like, I mean, I know I'm still like very, very young, and I don't know nearly enough about myself or the world, and I'll continue to get burnt and to make mistakes, and that's kind of all a part of the process of growing, I guess, and becoming a better person and kind of finding out where you stand in the world. But yeah, I think with respect to this stuff, it's good to hear and just to be grounded, because I can't tell you how many actors and actresses I've met, and even in other roles within the industry, who have just gone stars in their eyes, and they get swept up by it all, and they don't come back down. They fundamentally change as people, and you get to the point where you're literally like, wow, I do not recognize you anymore. What happened to you? And it's scary how easy it is for that to happen. So I think being grounded is the most important thing. I mean, for me, like, having like a really strong family has helped me a lot. My parents, really, really good grounding forces for me. My sisters, very, very good grounding forces. My friends who, you know, I went to school with in the UK, when I see them, it's got nothing to do with, like, we joke about, you know, the shows and the movies and the, you know, the Instagram comments and all of that stuff. They like to have fun and take the piss, and I wouldn't want it any other way, because you need to be brought back down to earth. And I think if you're, after a while, I think people surround themselves with people that tell them what they want to hear. Either they seek it out or it just happens naturally, and sooner or later you I guess lose sight of what's important. And I've seen it happen so many times. It's crazy.
Me too. And look, I wonder if there's something about, obviously, you know, you're an Englishman and I am, you know, from New Zealand originally, then Australia. We've kind of come into this Hollywood bubble, you know what I mean, a little bit as outsiders. I mean, you came in very young, right, and really at a high level, but we're still kind of outsiders, and maybe that's part of it. There's always been a skepticism where I try to keep a little bit of distance, even where I live. You know, I base myself up in Portland, Oregon, but
yeah,
you know, come down to LA and have, you know, stayed with you like sometimes for months at a time, and I kind of like that thing of going into the bubble and then stepping out of it. And to your point, certainly having friends and a girlfriend actually who's completely disconnected from the industry. There's been something really healthy about that, where I don't need to bring that home with me, you know. I kind of want to get that outsider perspective.
I mean, there are some friends of mine who I love them to pieces. I love speaking to them, and it's good to hear their perspective. But all they talk about is the industry. All they talk about is the industry and the emotion behind it and the thoughts behind every little decision. And I think some people are so engrossed in it that they can't kind of see outside of it. And I don't know, I think just having perspective is the most important thing. That's the one big thing I learned from growing up, because every few years my dad would be relocated by his company, so we would move around a lot when I was a kid. So I, you know, spent time, every few years I would be in a different school in a different country. So I was in the Czech Republic for a while, I was in the UK, in Belgium, in Texas, before eventually moving to LA. And yeah, having that perspective and seeing other experiences and kind of having a balanced outlook on life, I think is key. Again, like you said, kind of like keep it at arm's length, and because that allows you to see it for what it is, rather than, because, you know, when you're so invested in something, the world moves on and you kind of don't move along with it.
And maybe your family and friends have given you a few hints that, you know, you might be losing yourself or, you know, losing perspective, but it's hard not to. And it's funny, I mean, even this industry, it is kind of like a relationship. It's like it's
an abusive relationship.
It is, right? It's a relationship that your friends would say, you got to get out of that. That is.
Yeah, what are you doing, you crazy person?